Hello, Pulat. How are you?
Hi, Maya. Thank you. I'm good. How are you?
I'm very good and very happy to finally meet you over Zoom, though, for now. I've been, I follow you on social media and I've been watching your interviews that are really very interesting. You've had very interesting guests, from lawyers to judges. The topics that you cover in your interviews are really very interesting. And your style is also very interesting when you interview people. I really like the way you ask your questions. So I'm a fan of yours, Pulat, and I'm very happy that you are my guest today. And I would like you to start by introducing yourself to the audience, if you can, please.
Well, thank you, Maya. Thank you. I'm a fan of yours. You
Thank you.
are also a great interviewer, and I like your show. I am Pulat Yunosov. I'm from Toronto. I live in Toronto. I'm a lawyer in Toronto. I'm a litigator in Toronto. I define myself as a litigator through my clients. I mean, I don't do criminal, so that way it's easy to define me. I do only civil litigation, but I really like to define myself through my clients. I seek out and find really good, sophisticated, interesting people who need my help, and I work with them towards their goals together, sometimes for years. And I'm very fortunate to have really great, amazing clients. I usually have only a handful. I don't go for the volume. I try to work closely with a handful of really interesting people that do really interesting things outside of the files in life. And I'm really fortunate to be one of the people who help them achieve their missions. I live in Toronto. I stay in Toronto. I don't really go outside of Toronto for work. So you can call me a Toronto lawyer. I hope I'm not an arrogant Toronto lawyer. I try to control that, but it's the city is a little bit arrogant for a reason. So I'm sometimes I can't help catching that from Toronto. But stay humble. That's my motto. I really try to. So I'm sorry if during this interview I will come across as a little arrogant. It's also my cultural background. I apologize, but I really like my job. I've been doing it for 12 years. I learned a lot from the ground up. I started my practice almost immediately after my call to the bar. So I bypassed a lot of the traditional training structures that litigators go through, and it was a blessing and a curse. Everybody understands why it's a curse. I will explain why it was a blessing. It was a blessing because we live in the time of great change in how lawyers practiced and how litigation specifically is conducted. And because I was thrown overboard and was on my own almost from day one, I had to start from first principles. I had to understand why things are the way they are. I had to look at the roots of the rules, at why the rules are the way they are, at why laws are the way they are. So, and I took a long time to figure those things out in the course of my practice. And I think it helped me to come up with really interesting, creative solutions that reflect the change that the practice of law is going through. And I think it helped me survive those changes and even thrive despite the changes, right? So people are often concerned that big dramatic changes will ruin them. I think the opposite happened to me. I'm really, really thankful for the opportunities that I had over the years. And I'm thankful to everyone who provided me with those opportunities, opposing counsel, judges, and first and foremost, my clients.
All right, so I'm gonna just ask you a follow-up question here on a few things or questions on a few things that you mentioned, Pulat, because you said that you didn't follow a traditional route that usually lawyers go through in civil litigation. I mean, I can tell you as a criminal lawyer, we're seeing more and more, and it's very common for lawyers to work on their own on the criminal side. But maybe because you're a civil lawyer, if you can explain to us how that is different in a civil context, because you are right, most civil lawyers tend to practice in firms, usually big firms as well. So can you maybe explain the difference between civil and criminal when it comes to practicing on your own and starting your own firm?
There is a huge difference between criminal practice and civil practice. And that huge difference is legal aid. There is almost no legal aid available in civil practice. So you have to find your own clients. And we can talk about clients in civil litigation, but they're very different from clients in criminal litigation. So when you're a criminal lawyer, and if you can get legal aid certificates, then, and pardon my outsider view, I don't claim to be an insider in criminal practice, but my understanding is that if you get access to legal aid certificates, then there is an abundance of clients. No one ever complained about the shortage of people charged with criminal offenses in this country, right? So that helps start your own practice, because remember, the number one rule of your own practice is find clients. This is the number one rule, assuming you're competent and everything else, right? Yeah. So that's why I think there are more criminal lawyers who are sole practitioners, more criminal lawyers who start their own practices than civil lawyers, because in civil litigation, and there are two large chunks of civil litigation here. So in civil litigation, it's harder to find your own clients without reputation, without connections, and so on. So in civil litigation, there are two big chunks of civil litigation. There's civil litigation that deals with a large volume of files, and often is on a contingency fee basis, such as personal injury, medical malpractice, and so on and so forth. To get started in that area, you need some capital, you need some money up front to pay for experts, to pay for staff, so you can handle large volume of files, and so you can support claims with expert opinions. The second chunk of civil litigation is commercial litigation, what I call commercial litigation. And in that area, reputation is probably really important in finding clients, because clients with good commercial files are not just going to bring them to nobody, right? Sorry for, maybe this is my arrogance, I'm now finally coming through, but in commercial litigation, this is the reality. You're either nobody or you're somebody, or you're a great commercial litigator. There's a handful of those, right? It's really hard to get to that level. So that's why it's really harder to start your own practice in commercial litigation or in civil litigation in general.
Okay. So it's also, I mean, and you are right. I mean, legal aid is something that we find more in the criminal, family, and immigration, I believe, but we don't really hear about that in the civil context. So it's, I mean, legal aid won't get you necessarily clients, but I mean, you're getting paid at least something when you do have a legal aid client. But then I think ultimately you'll still have to do the same type of work to get those clients. Although your clients on the civil front are a little bit different, right? Because there could be it's corporations and businesses if it's commercial, I'm guessing. So it's definitely a different
it's
type.
Not necessarily corporations,
Yeah.
But generally it has to be someone who can afford legal fees, right? In criminal, this is not a necessary condition. It's not a condition of client-lawyer relationship because of legal aid. So sometimes the government can fund criminal lawyers' fees, but most of the time in civil litigation, the client has to afford the legal fees, and they are high for the average person. So most clients are not average people. So they have usually a lot of choice among good commercial litigators. So it's hard to get them. That's why when you start in commercial litigation, it's doable. I did it. You have to start with people who cannot afford conventional legal fees conventional to the civil litigation industry. So you have to subsidize those clients in the beginning for several years, probably, if you want to stick to commercial litigation. So you have to charge low fees, you have to cap your fees. I'm not sure about the contingency fee arrangement that some lawyers offer. I've never done that. Pretty much, I don't think I've ever done that. But because I felt like I'm already subsidizing this client, why should I also assume the risk that this client is taking with prosecuting this claim? But yeah, you have to subsidize your clients if you want to practice in the commercial litigation area, or you have to be really good at marketing, you have to be really good at branding, and you have to be really good at finding those good clients that would normally go to firms that are known for their expertise or lawyers that are known for their expertise, but you are able to convince them to go to you instead for whatever reason. And that happened to me also. I mean, it's not very common, but you can pull it off, maybe because of your special expertise in related fields, maybe technology expertise, or maybe common cultural background, right? Someone from where you're originally from, who speaks and you speak their language, right? So there are different ways to get good clients even early on, but you will still have to subsidize quite a few files in the beginning of your career as a commercial litigator.
And so you've mentioned now twice the cultural background. First of all, what is your cultural background, Pulat?
My cultural background is Canadian with a heavy mix in of several cultures from Eastern Europe and east of Eastern Europe. Let me put it this way.
Okay, I mean more specifically though, like what languages do you speak? Do you speak
My
a
first
language?
language is Russian,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like your first love. Your first language is like your first love. You will never ever forget your first language, and you will always have some sort of strong feelings when you speak that language, when you read in that language, when you write in that language. So this is my first language and it's not going anywhere. I use it sometimes still. I have some clients that prefer to speak in that language, but most of my clients do not speak Russian.
But I mean, obviously, it does help when you also come from the same background as your client. I mean, it certainly helps me a lot in my practice. So I can imagine it's the same thing for you. And okay, I want to go now though into something that's more specific because one of the things that I've noticed online is that you've been talking a bit about crypto. And this is something that I'm interested in. I have to be honest, I don't know much about it except that it's something that's related to the virtual world. I think that I don't think that there's anything physical about crypto unless I'm wrong. So I'm really interested to hear a little bit from you, Pulat, about crypto and if there is an intersection between crypto and litigation.
Right. Yes, there's definitely an intersection about crypto and litigation. The whole point of crypto was to evade litigation. One of the
Okay.
main reasons for inventing crypto was to escape the jurisdiction of the courts, to become judgment proof, to escape the domain of the traditional classic political powers and create this virtual world where
And banks,
these
right?
banks, yes, and banks too, because people who invented crypto considered banks to be an inalienable part of the traditional power structure that was unfair and rotten and pretty much doomed, they thought, because it accumulated so many errors in its DNA. But we're still in the very early stages of crypto, despite what people say about it. Some people have written it off already because of the down cycle. Some people are hyping it up. But the reality is, it is such a dramatically new and different technology that you cannot really judge it until a lot more time has passed. And the most important property of this technology is that it creates a computer simulation of money. Just to keep it very simple, it's a computer simulation of money. And this computer simulation is not owned or controlled by any server, any corporation, or anyone else. There are two types of computer programs. There are computer programs that run on specific computers that are started by specific people. Remember, every computer program has an on and off switch, every computer program, except for the distributed peer-to-peer computer programs. So a normal computer program always has an on and off switch. You start it, you stop it. So whoever can start and stop that computer program controls that computer program, right? So banks, more precisely, central banks, can stop electronic deposits in banks, held by banks at any time. They have the off switch for your money. So most of our money today is not in the form of banknotes or coins. They are in the form of deposits on bank accounts. The vast majority of money.
Yeah.
So yeah, e-transfer is just a payment mechanism for sending money from one bank account to another. But the vast majority of money doesn't have a physical form. And this was true before crypto. Crypto did not introduce virtual money. Virtual money has existed for decades. So most of our money exists in the form of bank deposits. So most of our money is bank deposit money. What is bank deposit money? Bank deposit money are entries in a database controlled by central banks and commercial banks licensed by central banks. And this is a very tight circle. It's an incredibly tight circle that it is almost impossible to penetrate for startups. Try starting a bank in Canada. Just try. You will not succeed. I'm almost certain that you will not succeed. That's why we have relatively few banks. And have you heard about any new banks lately? Well, there is a good reason for that. This is a tight circle of highly trusted members who control the vast majority of money in Canada, which is the bank deposit money. I mean, if you have the on and off switch, and they have the on and off switch for money. So in theory, the bank, your bank, can write any value into the database entry that represents your account balance. Imagine you could be a billionaire overnight, but there are a lot of checks and balances in the system, in this tight circle, that will not let them do it. But these checks and balances depend on trust and depend on internal mechanisms that banks enforce and control, right? That's why they have floors and floors of people. That's why their transactions take days. Sometimes, don't people wonder sometimes, why does it take days for a wire transfer to get there? I mean, it's all electronic, right? No, wrong. I mean, it's electronic at the end, but they have so many checks and balances that actual people have to take these payments through certain hoops to make sure that the system maintains its integrity. And then people retort and they say, well, but credit cards, they're instant. You just tap your watch, the Apple Pay, right? And then they give you the chewing gum, and you just walk away with your chewing gum. Well, credit cards, they're not money. In that instant, when you tap your watch, what is exchanged is not money. What is exchanged is a contract that represents a promise to pay money later by your bank, right? And because it's not money, because it's a private contract, completely private contract, the parties to which are Visa International, for example, your bank, yourself, and the merchant, because it's a completely private contract. Parties can use any technology to send that contract over the wires. And international credit card payment networks such as Visa, MasterCard, Amex, American Express, they're such huge corporations, and they have so much success because way back when, I don't know, in the 70s, maybe even in the 60s, they designed and they built, way before the internet, they built an international communication network for a very specific, narrow, special purpose of sending those messages, for sending those payment messages, for sending those private contracts that represent credit card payments. But one of the provision of that contract is going to be that that contract is not completed until actual bank deposit money, the real money, lands in the merchant account, lands in the merchant bank account, and is taken out of the customer's bank account, right? So
and it seems like then, so I mean, it's the banks here who are always in control of that money. And so is it right then, or fair to say, that crypto was created in a way to escape that control and just to have more freedom when it comes to money?
yes, that's exactly right. And the technology behind crypto is very different from the technology behind bank deposit money. Bank deposit money is a very complex legacy system that involves a lot of human intervention. The technology behind crypto is purely automated. And when I told you about two types of computer programs, one with an on-off switch and the other one without, well, the crypto runs on software that doesn't have an on-off switch. I mean, you have to massively attack the crypto network for that network to shut down, or that network has to lose faith of its members for it to be shut down. Other than that, it's just going to go on like wind or sun, right? Or other natural phenomena. So it's impossible to shut down a real popular crypto network such as the Bitcoin network. And that network ensures that money changes hands, crypto money changes hands instantly or almost instantly without human intervention. So the only missing element, you can create that network just like Visa created its own payment network, but the only missing element is the actual representation of money that will be secure and reliable. Because what we know about digital things, digital files, is that it's really easy to copy them. The added cost of copying a file is almost zero. So the genius of the cryptocurrency technology is that they invented a way to prevent digital money from being copied. We all know how easy it is to copy things. Like write $500 in a text file, save the text file, and just create 1 million copies of that file. Now, it doesn't mean that you have $500 million. But if you represent your crypto money as a text file or any kind of electronic file, what stops anyone from duplicating it? So they invented a way based on distributed networks, where a lot of copies of the record of who has what is just spread out across many members of the network. So even if some members lose those records, they're identical copies on other computers. Basically, there is a huge book of who has what and who paid whom. And that book is used to decide at the time, at transaction time, what you can pay and what you cannot pay, right? If you have only $1,000 equivalent in crypto, you cannot pay more than $1,000 in crypto, because this is what the book says. The genius is, how do you keep that book safe, and how do you prevent people from changing that book, tampering with it, so on.
But I wanted to ask you, Pulat, because I mean, and it's true. I mean, the point that you made that virtual, in a way, money existed before crypto, because like the transfers by bank, that's all virtual. But I think one thing about money with banking is that you can convert that into actual cash, actual tangible money that you can see. Is that, I don't think that's possible with crypto, right? Like, can you convert, or maybe I'm missing something, but can you actually convert crypto into something physical?
I think your question is interesting from the point of view of enforcing judgments, or from the point of view of seizing assets. I think this is how we can turn around your question to create an interesting answer to this question.
Mm-hmm.
So you're right. So if you have banknotes, then you have a physical object, right? And that physical object has two properties. The first property is you don't need the bank to transact banknotes, right? So that's why criminals use banknotes to do business, because that helps them evade the surveillance and monitoring of the traditional banking system, and the accountability of the traditional banking system. But the second property of cash that makes criminals vulnerable, actually, is that you can seize cash. You can seize bank accounts, of course. You can seize bank accounts, but what happens is people create offshore accounts, take money out of the jurisdiction. I mean, if the account is in US dollars, we recently learned that the United States government can seize any accounts in the world if they're denominated in US dollars, simply by virtue of how US dollar accounts work. They work only because foreign banks have correspondent accounts in commercial banks that are members of the Federal Reserve. So any US dollars you have on your, I don't know, Lebanese bank account, they're actually sitting in the US somewhere, completely within the jurisdiction of the United States government. But with cash, with banknotes, I mean, you can send a special forces unit and just grab that, or you can send a police unit and grab that if you know where it is, or you can destroy it, and then this money simply goes out of circulation. It's like it never existed. So that's what makes cash different from bank deposit money. Now, crypto is very similar to cash, except it's digital simulation of that. Yes, with crypto also you can seize crypto in the same way you can seize cash, except you seize the physical medium on which access keys are stored, the access keys that are necessary to transact your crypto. Yes, your crypto lives independently of you, in theory, in the cryptocurrency network where it was minted. But to use it effectively, you need to sign transactions with your own special access keys. It's like a password, to simplify. And in theory, again, you can keep that password in your head. You can memorize it, but it's so long that most people won't do it and won't take chances, especially if the assets locked by that key are large. Let's say it's $1 million worth of crypto. I mean, are you really going to take chances with your memory here? So what people do is they write those keys down on a physical medium, on a piece of paper, which makes it then exactly like a banknote for seizure purposes or for destruction purposes, if that's the only copy. Or they more commonly keep it on in hardware wallets or software wallets, but software wallets, they also have to live on some kind of hardware medium, such as your phone or something like that. So that also makes essentially your crypto seizable if it's on that hardware medium. So yeah, you can have a physical representation of crypto. Usually it's some kind of something that's very similar to USB key or your phone. And it's the physical representation of crypto similar to cash, simply because if somebody seizes it, you can't use your money anymore. It's theirs now. It's
Hmm.
just the exact same way that what like it happens when somebody seizes cash. So law enforcement is really good at seizing crypto. Like it's probably the most experienced group in society when it comes to seizing crypto. They have their ways simply because of their extremely high expertise in investigations and surveillance and anything physical. They combine that with their understanding of crypto, and they're really good at seizing crypto. So we hear these stories all the time. So they seized so much money from this scammer, so much money from that criminal. And they do that because people are lazy and people take liberties with their wallets, with their cryptocurrency wallets, and that's it. It's physical
Hmm.
now, so it's seizable. And it can also be destroyed, just like physical cash. If you destroy all copies of your access keys, then that's it. Your cryptocurrency it's as good as dead. It cannot ever be used again. And there's quite a bit of crypto and on different networks that is forever lost to humanity because the private keys were lost by the
Right.
original owner.
And Pulat, where does crypto get its value from?
The same place Canadian dollars get their value from.
Okay.
Somebody needs them. Somebody wants them. The same place where Gucci bags and Prada bags get their value from. What is the value of a Prada bag? Why are women willing to pay $5,000 for a piece of leather and sometimes not even leather? Right? And why
Yeah.
are certain organizations so good at forging them that they're indistinguishable from the original? Yet when somebody finds out it's a forgery, then the value drops, or the forgeries are from the beginning sold for a tiny fraction of what the original costs. The value of everything comes from uh, the mental state of people who buy these things, who are offering something of
Mhm.
value in return. The value of anything, absolutely anything. There is no inherent value in almost anything. I mean, look, the most important things in our life are free. Yet if we don't have them, we will die. I'm talking about air. I'm talking
Yeah.
about water.
Water. Yeah.
I'm talking about even food. I mean, there were times, and even now, today, to our shame, people are dying of hunger somewhere in the world, even in Canada, maybe. But generally, food has been abundant for a while. Like air, sometimes air is not abundant, but it's really hard to think of a situation where people just choke. It has to be a very special case. Generally, these things are free, yet we will die without them. So value is a really relative term. Crypto gets value from the same place US dollars get value from, and the corollary is that the US dollar can lose value in theory as quickly as some cryptocurrencies did in the past.
Mhm.
Because if it's in your head,
Yeah.
then no one knows what's going to
Yeah.
be in your head the following day, right? Even if it's in the heads of millions of people, millions of people, large groups of people have been known to change their minds about the most sacred of things very quickly sometimes. So who knows?
But so Pulat, it seems like during the pandemic, crypto really gained popularity. A lot of people started buying crypto and getting into this whole cryptocurrency world. And now I don't know, like it feels like it's not as strong as it was during the pandemic, but you seem to have a view that crypto is still relevant, and that even if maybe right now it's not as popular as it was maybe in 2020, 2021. Maybe if you can tell us a bit more what your thoughts are on that and the future of crypto.
There are three main applications of crypto today. Number one is crime. Number two is a game that people play. So speculation, some form of game, right? And number three is proof of concept experiment. And of course, number three is the most interesting, and governments participate in that, corporations participate in that. Number three is where the promise of crypto is at. And like I said, crypto is still at very early stages. This is the proof of concept stage. This is an unprecedented technology, and every major central bank in the world has a group working on implementing cryptocurrency, their currencies in cryptocurrency form. Bank of Canada also has a working group that is at least investigating digital Canadian dollar. When we say digital Canadian dollar, when you hear the word digital dollar, that's crypto dollar. That's a cryptocurrency form of the Canadian dollar. It's not the bank deposit money. Nobody calls bank deposit money. That's electronic money. You can say electronic, but when you hear digital money, that's probably cryptocurrency. So every major central bank is working on that. This is the proof of concept stage. I mean, the first two applications of crypto, of course, have hurt cryptocurrency's reputation. But the thing about technologies, just like science or nature, they don't care about their reputations with humans or with people. They just don't care.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't think, they don't feel, they just work. So yeah, I mean, people think that crypto is only for crime or only for speculation, but let them. The real reason crypto is important is because it is undergoing proof of concept testing and development by very, very, very serious players, central banks, governments, very large corporations, banks, of course, are also investigating that, because it just holds so much promise. And the promise is in allowing a lot more automation of money than we have been able to achieve so far. Everybody's talking about AI right now, artificial intelligence. And it looks like we will delegate more and more jobs to artificial intelligence. The biggest job in any society is money. Everybody is obsessed with money. This is really the biggest part of any society today, and for the last 2,000 years probably. And we haven't really made any progress, or a lot of progress, in automating that part of our lives. Like I said, wire transfers take many days, too many days. There are people who lose money because scammers easily gain access to their bank accounts. Well, trust me, people lose a lot more money from banks than from cryptocurrency. It's just different scale. The vast majority of people don't have any cryptocurrency. So the proof of concept stage is where we at, and it's really early, and but it's not early for some legal applications. So, for example, law enforcement dedicates a lot of resources to cryptocurrency. I know that some criminal lawyers are also becoming cryptocurrency experts, because their clients' files raise cryptocurrency issues, right? So cryptocurrency raises important constitutional civil liberties issues. For example, when governments try to regulate cryptocurrency, they may prohibit computer programmers, software developers, from releasing software code that makes cryptocurrency possible. But software code is always text. It's something that somebody typed on their computer. So if you if you make it a crime to publish text, does it engage the Charter of Rights and Freedoms? Does it engage the Constitution? Does it engage civil liberties, right? So there's a lot of room here for criminal lawyers to make a difference and these issues are going to get only bigger.
Mhm. Well, okay. So, I mean, that's very interesting what you told us today about the crypto Pulat. I mean, I certainly learned a lot now about it. But I want to switch now to something a bit different. I want to go back to your series and your interviews because I would like to know. I mean, you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but I mean, we've seen you've interviewed a lot of very interesting personalities, and I've enjoyed watching many of your interviews. But is there one interview or maybe one or two that you thought were more special or more interesting or had more meaning to you? If you can maybe share that with us.
Well, since our audience today is probably mostly criminal lawyers, I interviewed a few criminal lawyers. I interviewed Daniel Robitaille. I interviewed Neha, my law school buddy, Neha Chag. I interviewed Karim Assad. I interviewed Lawrence Gridden. I interviewed Harpreet Saini, and I, of course, interviewed Murray Hannon. So I would suggest that everybody who is a criminal lawyer go and check out those interviews. I respect criminal lawyers. Criminal lawyers can always teach a lot. Can teach the civil litigators a lot. Especially the Harpreet Saini episode, we really dived into trials, into murder trials, and the complexity of a criminal trial and all the pretrial motions and everything and things like that. Especially very, very serious when trials are over very serious charges such as murder. And I really liked interviewing Danielle because she's just such a great person.
Yeah.
And I just like Danielle. So she's a great lawyer. She has a huge cachet. She's the managing partner of Hannon Hodgson Robitaille. So check out, and then of course all the other criminal law interviews that I did with Neha and with Lawrence, definitely take a look. I interviewed a lot of judges. Again, I would suggest go to thequestion.tv. That will take you to the YouTube channel, and there are playlists there. Check out the judges. There are some judges that primarily focus on criminal law now or before. For example, Associate Chief Justice of Ontario, Michael Fairburn. I interviewed her, and she was a Crown lawyer who worked opposite of Murray Hannon often when Murray Hannon was defending her clients. So they are two people of extremely high caliber. And that was a very interesting interview with Michael Fairburn. I strongly recommend that interview to all criminal lawyers. Of course, I have a very strong civil litigation bent in my show because that's who I am. Check out the Beryl McLaughlin interview. I raised some issues there about the Charter of Rights. She presided over some of the major decisions on charter rights in this country. And I was fortunate and lucky to ask her a couple of questions about that. So check that out. We talk about the independence of the courts with her. That's a very important issue for all litigators. I would definitely recommend watching that interview. Everybody else is probably mostly civil lawyer or civil judge or judge mostly dealing with civil cases. So I thought that the list that I just gave you would be a really nice cross-section specifically for our criminal lawyer audience.
Yeah, they are. And I've watched these interviews and they're really very interesting. So thank you for doing that. It was very nice of you to have these very interesting interviews. And I'm very grateful that you took the time to chat with me today about yourself, your practice, and cryptocurrency. I'm very happy to meet you, Pulat. And I, again, want to thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Maya. It was an honor for me to come to your show.
Thank you. And the honor is mine as well. So hope to see you and meet you in person soon, sometime.
For sure. We'll do that. I'll make it happen.
Thank you, Pulat.